of the world today, where we bring you the latest in all the newspapers in Egypt and outside Egypt. And we have with us today in the studio, we have with us Dr. Khaled Refaat, a political analyst, and a very good afternoon, sir. And we have the pleasure to have you with us today in our program. Thank you so much, sir. And sir, we start off with Al-Ahram Online, where the headline reads, Egypt court voids Tehran and Sanafir Island Saudi-Egyptian deal, sources say government to appeal. And of course, you know, sir, that this has been a great controversy when it took place, and there were many side discussions about it. But we read first the piece of information which says that the State Lawsuits Authority, the body which represents the government in the lawsuit, will appeal Tuesday's ruling by an administrative court which voided a recent Egyptian-Saudi border redemarcation agreement. The ruling before the Supreme Administrative Court within hours, a judicial source told the Ahram Online. Egypt's administrative court ruled earlier Tuesday that the 8th April border demarcation agreement, which placed the two Egyptian Red Sea islands of Tiran and Sanafir in Saudi waters, is void, adding that the two islands should remain under Egyptian sovereignty. Sir, how do you read this piece of news and this news that was introduced this morning? And of course, you know that there was great controversy debate and a controversy when the idea of Sanafir and Tiran took place, and that when the Saudi king came over here to Egypt and this agreement took place. How do you read this?
I read it. Actually, it doesn't matter what I believe is the Egyptian or the Saudi. The matter now is a court and it's a judge, and we should obey this thing. We should go with the court. If you don't like this, you go to higher Supreme Court, Supreme Administrative Court. This is Administrative Court. You got one more step. Go to higher Supreme Administrative Court. And then you can judge if these two islands are Saudi or are Egyptians. But I think the debate should stop right now, because everything is in court. It is not the time to go on talk shows and to go on papers and Facebook and so on.
Sir, the debate already stopped a few weeks ago when, after the agreement took place, actually there was, during this time, there was this debate or this controversy that we're talking about. However, it stopped. It's no more in action, this debate. Why did the court rule this agreement as void today?
It court it because they got papers, they got documents, they got maps that says that two islands are Egyptians. These two islands are very, very important, because these two islands are in the entrance of Aqaba Gulf. And for us, for Egyptians, it takes that our soldiers went there and we fight it there and our blood is there. So we should stop right now and no more talk. It is time to obey the court. This is law. If you don't like it, go to higher or Supreme Court. And I think the government will go to Supreme Court as long as they got the court rule. I think.
Sir, from your own perspective as an Egyptian citizen, how do you see this court ruling this morning?
It's justice. Court is justice. You can't say.
How do you read this agreement?
What I'm saying, I have no right to say that.
Sir, I understand this. I understand that you and I understand that this is a court ruling and that we have to obey the court. How do you see this court ruling this morning? As an Egyptian, do you think that it's in favor of Egypt or against Egypt?
No,
do you think the land is supposed to be with Saudi Arabia or with the Egyptian?
Okay, now we talk politics.
Yes,
no?
that's what. Yes, that's what I'm trying to
politics. When you talk politics, it is in our favor to stay Egyptians, because we can get the full control of the Aqaba Gulf and the entrance. There's only one entrance in Aqaba Gulf, and it's only 6 miles wide. So once we got control on the two sides of the warway, so it is our right to stop it or to open it as time as you like. This is very important from the military point of view. On the other hand, people say that now we are looking for the bridge between Egypt and Saudi Arabia, which gonna boom the economy and all this. Say, okay, what's the problem if we make this bridge, or if these two islands are Egyptians or Saudi? What's the problem? It's the same thing. The bridge, if you want to go for the bridge, you'll go for the bridge. It doesn't matter if the two islands are Egyptian or Saudi. It's logic. It's politics. But when you talk about the court law, no one
we
can
have to
talk.
abide to the court
Yeah.
ruling. Of course, we do have to. And sir, a little hint about the agreement, which was signed by Egypt and Saudi Arabia in early April during a 5-day visit by Saudi King Salman to Cairo, stipulated that the two islands in the southern entrance of the Red Sea's Gulf of Aqaba fall within Saudi waters, thus paving the way for a transfer of sovereignty to Riyadh. However, the court there is a court ruling that, and we were going to be waiting, that voided this agreement. And we move on to another headline, which reads, "Suicide bomber with biscuits and salt triggers alert." Belgian police and Belgian army as soldiers stand guard at the scene of a bomb alert on a major shopping street in Brussels on Tuesday, June the 21st, 2016. A man with psychiatrist problems who was carrying a fake suicide belt full of salt and biscuits was arrested on Tuesday after he triggered a major anti-terror operation at a Brussels shopping mall, prosecutors reported. Belgium remains on high alert, state alert, after Daesh claimed bomb attacks in March left 32 people dead at the airport and a metro station near European Union headquarters building. Prosecutors said they were still investigating whether the man, who had once claimed he was being urged to join Daesh in Syria, had any genuine links to terrorism or not. The 26-year-old man, identified only as JB, called police to say he had been abducted in a car and dropped at a City 2 mall in central Brussels with an explosives belt that was to have been detonated remotely. Sir, how far has terrorism extended in arms in Europe?
I think this is not Islamophobia, it's terrorphobia. Everyone is scared. Like if someone carries some biscuits, they think he is a terrorist. I think it's a joke, believe it or not. I don't know. It's something of terror or horror going everywhere in Europe right now because they expect a big hit from Daesh, and this is a sign of that.
This is a sign, but it's
a joke.
It's a joke, exactly.
Yeah.
It's somehow funny. That was
biscuits and salt. That's what I'm saying. It's a joke, but I think it's a sign of how much the Europeans are terrified right now, and really.
Europeans only, or the entire West?
I think all the world.
All the world.
I think all the world right now, especially after what happened in Orlando and Florida. I think all the world, even our Middle East, right now, Middle East expecting big hits of Daesh too. Or I don't even want to say Daesh, all the terrorist organization, whatever you name it. You name it, Jaish al-Islam, Jabhat al-Nusra, Daesh, whatever you name it doesn't matter. But all have the same ideas, all have the same behavior and the same targets. Unfortunately, they target us in the first order. They don't target others. They target their own homelands, home neighbors. Every one of us now is targeted. I don't know when they're going to hit. I don't know where they're going to hit. But for sure, there is day after day. Look what has gone on in Sinai. This morning, we got one officer and 6 soldiers. It's every day, same story every day. There's terror everywhere. So as President Sisi said, that the terrorists are going to hit us every day, and we should, all of us, staying together. Stop that. If we don't do this, I think the future is very dark.
So we move on to the Egypt Independent, where the headline reads, "Within 2 days to go, Britain's EU referendum vote still on knife edge." And the story reads, opinion polls on Tuesday suggested growing support among Britons for staying in the European Union, but the vote in 2 days' time, which will have far-reaching consequences for Britain in Europe, remains on knife edge. Britain will vote on Thursday on whether to quit the 28-nation bloc amid warnings from politicians, economists, and trade bodies across the globe that a decision to leave would plunge Britain and possibly much of Europe into recession. The bloc, already shaken by differences over migration and the future of the Eurozone, would lost its second largest economy, one of its top 2 military powers by far, its richest financial center. Sir, what do you suggest would be the scenario in Britain in 2 days?
Actually, what happened last week of the murder of Joe Cox, parliament member, lawmaker, has a very big influence on the vote results. Because before that, the result was almost 50-50, 50 going out, 50 staying in. But right now, last poll says that 53 saying we're going to stay in the EU, but 47% going to say we should go out. The problem is there is much more economic problem. They have a big fear from immigrants, because when they open their borders, every immigrant in France, in Belgium, or wherever, will go to Great Britain, because the currency, the Britain pound right now is the strongest currency in Europe right now. So they have the fear that immigrants will go there. This is a big problem for the people saying we're gonna go out of the EU. But for the economics and politicians, all of them say no, it's in our Britain favor to stay in the EU for military reasons. For first of all, that when we are in EU, we don't need to make our own army. We should go in the EU army, so we're gonna spend almost 1/10 or 1/5 we're gonna spend alone. The other thing is the economic one, that we have a bigger market. Instead of having 100 million Brits, we're going to go for 400 million. So this is in the favor of the British economy. But most people there, or right now half people there, say, no, we don't need this hassle, we don't need immigrants, we're going to stay in our country, we don't need all this headache, This is a problem there. But the murder of Joe Cox almost changes the poll results right now.
From your own point of view, sir, as a political analyst, how do you see it better for Britain to stay in the bloc or to go out?
To stay in.
To stay in the bloc.
To stay in, for sure.
And we move on, sir, to the newspaper, the World Bulletin, where the headline reads, Saudi Arabia urges trial of war criminals in Syria. Saudi Arabia has called for the trial of war criminals in war-ravaged Syria before international tribunals. During a session on Monday, the Saudi cabinet called on the international community to take practical steps with a view to halting bloodshed of civilians and protecting women and children from abuses committed by the Bashar al-Assad regime and allied militias, according to the official SPA news agency. It went on to underline the need to refer war criminals in Syria to international justice. Saudi Arabia is a main backer of Syrian opposition groups fighting the Assad regime, and Syria has been locked in a vicious circle and civil war since 2011, when the Assad regime cracked down on pro-democracy protests, which erupted as part of the Arab Spring uprisings with unexpectedly problems. Syria since then, more than 250,000 people have been killed and more than 10 million displaced across the war-battered country, according to the United Nations. The Syrian Center for Policy Research, however, put the death toll for the 6-year conflict at more than 470,000 people. Sir, what is the significance of the Saudi Arabian call for such trials at the time?
They are putting some pressure, political pressure on the Assad regime.
To leave?
But no, not to leave, because everyone now knows that the political resolution or the political solution is the one who dominates, not the military solution. So everyone now is going to Geneva for the third time. The Saudi, before going to Geneva, putting some pressure on the Assad regime, putting that using the UN or using the whole human rights organization all over the world, that showing and declaring that there is a big massacres, there's a big human rights violation in Syria. It's a political game, no more than that. Because the cabinet, the Saudi cabinet, is the first time to declare something like that.
How do you evaluate the humanitarian crisis in Syria today, sir? And how do you evaluate Egypt's stance towards solving or resolving this problem?
The situation is terrible. Everyone says that. These people go to the sea. They know that most of people go to the sea staying there, but they have nothing to leave. Everything. They lost everything. They lost homes, they lost safety, they lost jobs, they lost money. It's terrible there. It's catastrophic. But for Egyptians, there is our red lines that we should keep Syria as one country, undivided one country. This is first red line. Second red line, we should keep the Syrian army undestroyed. No one in Egypt has an advantage or wants to say that Syrian army divided or destroyed our river like what happened in Iraq. This is the two red lines we have. We have no problem if Bashar Assad stays or leave, because Bashar Assad, they sooner or later gonna leave. It takes 1 year, 2 years, 3 years. It doesn't matter. But all we care about right now to keep Syria as one country, undivided country, and to have to keep the Syrian army as well. This is all we care, Egyptians right now, or the Egyptian critics right now. So from those two red lines, we never involved in the Syrian jungle. We should stay out of the Syrian jungle. It's not our benefits or profits have nothing to do there. We just stay and see what's going on and how things are going to end up there.
Sir, finally, we move on to the World Bulletin, and it's on a more economic note, where Turkey's central bank cuts overnight lending rate. Turkey's central bank on Tuesday cut its overnight lending rate by 50 basis points following recent cuts in the last 3 months. The overnight lending rate, which is the rate at which banks borrow from the central bank overnight, was cut 50 basis points from 9.5% to 9%. The overnight borrowing rate, however, under which banks lend or deposit money to the central bank, remained unchanged at 7.25%. The 1-week repo rate, known as policy rate, was also kept at 7.5%, the bank reported. In late liquidity window interest rates between 4 p.m. and 5 p.m., the borrowing rate has been kept at 0% and lending rate has been reduced from 11% to 10.50%. Sir, is this step considered a sort of pressure on Turkey for its foreign policy?
It's a sign of how bad is the Turkish economy right now. As you know, in the last 2 years, the Turkish currency lost almost half its value against the dollar, US dollar. This is a big sign that they have a big crisis down there. They have no liquidity at banks at all.
A big crisis politically or economically?
Both of them.
Both economically and politically?
Both of them,
which is a very big problem.
That's what's going on now. Yes. Erdogan has a big economic problem now. If you look at the currency, every day the Turkish currency is going down, every day, in front of all currencies all over the world. This is a political sign. The political sign right now is that most of the world has very, very bad relationship with Turkey, especially Germany and France. Look what happened all over the world about the confess of the armed genocides. What happened? And if you look as a whole, how many countries all over the world has a strong relationship with Turkey? And the first country is Qatar. Now the first ally of Turkey is Qatar.
The bad political and economic status in Turkey going to be a bad influence on Qatar, or is it going to influence Qatar negatively?
It's going to be a mutual relationship, so the influence is going to be go both ways. As you know, that almost 3 months ago, Turkey opened a military base in Qatar, in Doha. So there is now Qatar and Turkey are two allies, military allies, economic allies, and everything. So once one of two parts has problems, this problem is going to go to the other side.
So it's related. The problem in this country influences on the other country. Dr. Khaled Refaat, we thank you, sir, political analyst. We thank you so much for joining us in our program, The World Today. Dear viewers, this was all, and this brings us to the end of this episode of The World Today, where we brought you the latest in the latest newspapers that we read this morning, and from all the team here, myself, Rana Al-Qassas. Tomorrow, meet us again at the same time with another team. I'm Rana Al-Qassas again, and I thank you so much for joining and wishing you a very happy Ramadan.